Go back. Good morning, everyone. I'm Krista Westervelt with Partners in Health and Wholeness, and this morning is our secret conversation on older adults, fraud, and scams. We're going to start with an opening prayer and have a presentation with our guest, David Kirkman, a Q&A, and a closing. And I'm going to turn it over to Nicole for the opening prayer.
Good morning, everyone. I invite you to join me in prayer today as we talk about very important parts of our community, people in our community who deserve our love and care, even as we all go through life's changing seasons. God is an invitation, a lure, a chance to do things differently, always before us.
Just people on the call.
God is the possibility of collective change. Though everyday, ordinary patterns of living disguise evil, uncover over sins of power. God makes known what is hidden, calls us to courage, makes us capable of radical solidarity. We are not left powerless. Every day, there are openings. Every day, a chance to choose what is right. Every day, an opportunity to repattern the world. Amen.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm going to introduce today's guest. This is David Kirkman, a former enforcement attorney with the North Carolina Department of Justice's Consumer Protection Division and the author of Elder Fraud Wars. Thank you for joining us today, Dave.
Thank you. Thank everybody for joining in on this program. It's the topic of elder fraud is something that should be close to anybody who has older friends, older adult family members. And it's something that a lot of us might tend to ignore until it actually happens to people in our family. But we're here today to talk about, who's out there, who's targeting the older members of our family, our older friends, and what we can do about it. And if we are actually older, I'm 68 years old, what we can do to foil this elder fraud industry. So let me see if I can pull up my program here. Can you all see?
Yes, thank you.
And here I am, former Special Deputy Attorney General for the North Carolina Department of Justice. I headed up the elder fraud unit for about 20 years there. And after I retired in 2017, I wrote a book about my experiences dealing with the elder fraud industry, but not just myself, but also my colleagues, both in law enforcement and also in the private sector. So this book talks about all kinds of people, from the actual scammers and fraud criminals themselves to victims here in North Carolina, many of whom lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, to people from BBB employees, bank tellers, doctors, all the way up to federal prosecutors who took on this elder fraud industry and actually were able to foil them, to take them down in many cases. If you live in the southeastern part of the state, you might have seen this story on WECT television a few weeks ago. It's about a driveway paving scammer by the name of Tommy Clack. And he took this woman you see featured here for $19,000 and almost got another $9,000 out of her on a bogus driveway repair scheme where he actually ended up doing nothing. He did absolutely nothing to her driveway except sort of paint it a dark color. And this is something that a lot of driveway paving scammers do, a lot of members of the elder fraud industry do. Tommy Clack is actually the subject of 4 chapters in my book, Elder Fraud Wars, and it's extremely entertaining 4 chapters because you will see how some of these criminals are actually so bent on getting back out there, scamming people as soon as they're let back out of jail. Tommy went to jail for 5 years in federal prison, got out in 2017, and immediately went back and started scamming again. So he went back to federal prison for 2 more years, got out a few months ago and scammed this woman down in Wilmington. So now he's being charged again. So when I talk about the elder fraud industry, what am I actually referring to? What it is not is the opportunistic niece or nephew or grandchild who sees grandma starting to lose it cognitively. And so they sort of zero in and get control over her affections or her finances and take as much money as they can. It's not the next door neighbor who does the same thing, or the opportunistic banker or insurance salesman. It's not, a preacher who sees this in one of his parishioners or her parishioners and strikes. The elder fraud industry are not people like this. The people I've just described usually do it as a one-off type of thing. But the members of the elder fraud industry, they actually go to work every morning or every night if they're based overseas, intent upon locating as many vulnerable seniors as they can here in the United States and in other countries, and exploiting each senior as many times as they possibly can for as much money as they possibly can. It's basically a business. It's a business that's only really been around for about 30 years. It was almost non-existent when I started working in the Attorney General's office back in the 1980s, but by the early 1990s, it established a foothold, and it was starting to rip off North Carolinians and people all across the US for extraordinary sums of money. So who are some of these members of the elder fraud industry? The biggest and worst and oldest of them are these people you see on the screen, the ones who do foreign lotteries and sweepstakes scams. And you can sort of see on the screen where some of the worst victimizations occurred. You can see up in Asheville, there's a gentleman who lives in one of the big retirement communities there. He's a former corporate executive who lost so far $900,000, and he's still losing it. There's a gentleman down in Jacksonville. He's a retired Marine officer who had a second career as a bank security vice president. He's lost $600,000 to these people who contact you and say you've won a fabulous sweepstakes overseas or a big lottery. All you need to do is pay the taxes or pay the insurance, pay this fee, pay that fee. And these groups are based mainly in these countries that you see here: Canada, Jamaica, the United Kingdom. These are countries that have a lot of English speakers, which makes it very easy to run the scam. Or Costa Rica and the Philippines, where there are also a lot of English speakers or expatriated Americans who can call from these countries and make a lot of money. And then finally, the former Soviet Union, which includes now Russia, Moldova, and a country that's been in the news a lot lately, Ukraine. How many have heard of grandparents scams? You're probably all raising your hands there. I mean, it's been with us probably for about 10 years now, and it's run out of these particular countries that you see on the screen. It's Canada and the United States, mainly run by motorcycle gangs here in North America, and also some Russian mobsters, and also, again, from the former Soviet Union states. The worst victimization that I've come across or heard about here in North Carolina is a woman in Charlotte who lost about $65,000 over the course of about 10 days, thinking her grandson was in prison down in Mexico. Home repair scammers and driveway paving scammers. Now, there was a huge organized criminal group based out of the Rocky Mount area that fanned out across North Carolina and Virginia and Maryland, and would scam homeowners with all sorts of bogus repairs. And they claim something was wrong with your roof or in your attic or down in your basement, someplace you couldn't really see. They'd claim you had mold in the walls of your house. And they would repeatedly hit you up for all these unnecessary repairs that they didn't even conduct. But you can see here is one of the worst victimizations we had was a gentleman in Cary, $275,000. $250,000 victims of this particular group were not uncommon here in North Carolina. Driveway paving scammers like Mr. Clack, whose picture you saw earlier. We have one victim of Mr. Clack over in Greensboro who lost $80,000. She's a retired UNC Greensboro professor. Sweetheart scams, that's really interesting where most of these are coming from. The ones that are perpetrated online or over the telephone usually come out of Southwest Africa or members of Southwest African families who are based in other countries. But you can see from Nigeria to Senegal, that's where a lot of these things are based. Ghana has become a real hotbed of this type of scam lately. The United Kingdom is the source of a lot of these scams, as is Spain. And here in the United States, there are a lot of people who do this. Some of them are family members of those back in these other countries who are assisting in these scams, but actually a lot of them are prison inmates who are running these scams out of prisons here in North Carolina and around the country. They do it with stolen smartphones or smuggled smartphones where they research you over the internet, see what sort of things you have posted on Facebook or other social media sites. And then they strike. They strike up a conversation with you, strike up a friendship, and then it becomes a romance. The next thing you know, you're sending all this money to people you think are some corporate executive working overseas, some construction contractor working in Saudi Arabia. But going back one side, you see that one of the worst victimizations of this type of scam, this scam, was somebody who lost $1.2 million. She was a bank executive in the Triad area. So most of these victims that we talk about in the book and that I dealt with during my career were all very accomplished professionals. It's not somebody who's naive or just isn't very smart, not very savvy. They're all very bright people who earned a lot of money by being bright, by being very skeptical. You've probably heard of these Nigerian money transfer schemes where somebody calls up, claims to be a princess from some country whose family has been deposed. She's trying to get millions of dollars out of her country or his country into the United States. Could they use your bank account to funnel this money in, and they'll share 1/4 of whatever amount of money they're trying to get into the United States. Next thing you know, they're draining money out of your bank account, or they're telling you we have to pay one more bribe or one more tax payment in order for this $40 million to land in your bank account. And you see here that, again, a $1 million plus victimization in the Charlotte area. This was a retired businessman who lost $3.4 million to this particular scam. Same countries as the sweetheart scam, same groups. The treasury agent scam, the IRS scam, anybody get calls from or robocalls from these people? I'm sure all of you have, probably multiple times. And most of these scams up until recently originated out of India and Pakistan. Somehow groups over there discovered that this scam was very easy to run. A lot of the people who were running it worked for some of these call centers that were assisting American corporations and the customers of those corporations with, problems with that, whatever they had purchased, or trying to sell them a warranty on whatever product they had just purchased from Sears or some other legitimate company. But they discovered that they could actually make more money by running these scams, like the treasury agent scam. And so here you can see one of the worst victimizations was somebody down in Charlotte lost $60,000 to these particular scams. Now, cyber criminals, they exist in every one of these countries that's not colored gray, or any one of these continents not colored gray. So there are none of them in Antarctica, but they're based just about everywhere else in the world. And they could actually include the kid who lives next door, who hacks into your Wi-Fi system and eventually gets into your computer and starts stealing stuff. But a lot of them are really sophisticated, organized criminal gangs, such as these Russian mobsters. And they, amass all this information on you. They siphon off bits and pieces of your identity, all your financial information, and they sell it on the dark web, or they actually exploit it themselves. But these people are based pretty much everywhere. The tech support scams, again, I'm sure you've had these people call you or robocall you and say, I work with Microsoft, we see a problem with your computer. They're based in these two countries in particular, India and China. And not coincidentally, these are probably the places you end up talking to when you call your internet service provider with a problem with your computer. And you're talking to somebody from this particular country, maybe India or China. And so it doesn't seem all that odd when somebody calls you up and says, hey, Mr. Kirkman, there's a problem with your computer. We need to fix it right away. So that's where a lot of these scams are based out of. And here you can see a $90,000 victim from Durham, North Carolina. It's all over the state, some of these super victims. The thing about losing important financial information to these scammers and all the different groups that I just described, not only will run their basic scam, but they're also going to try to steal your identity and pretend to be you and get all kinds of credit or purchase things in your name. But you shouldn't just assume that they have to call you to get your information. They actually are able to find this information in many other ways. And it surprised me once when I went to a demonstration of the dark web, and somebody who was running this presentation said, "Mr. Kirkman, you want to see what we can find on the dark web about you?" And sure enough, there on the dark web, they found my entire social security number, everywhere I had bank accounts and investment accounts, how long I'd owned my house. It was pretty scary to see what's out there. So we should all assume that this information is out there, it's being bought and sold, and somebody's going to strike sooner or later doing some sort of identity theft scam on us. And these are certain things that you probably want to make sure you do just to foil these identity scammers. Because if they've got information on your, say, your bank accounts or your investment accounts, your 401k, your IRA, they've got your password. So change your password as often as you can, or regularly. I do mine every 6 months on sensitive accounts like this. Use complicated passwords that don't involve the name of your dog, like I used to do, or name of your kids or your grandchildren. Try to use two-factor authentication, which usually involves a text message to your telephone once you log in, and you have to key in the numbers on that text message. You should also check your credit reports regularly. That's how you're going to see that somebody has stolen your identity or bought your identity on the dark web. You can do that for free with each of the 3 major credit companies once a year. And actually, one of them is actually giving everybody a free access to their credit report right now. So you should always regularly check your credit report, see what's out there about you, see if somebody's taking out a home loan in your name. Get a good computer security system like Norton or McAfee or some certain other ones. And these are ones that usually require you to pay a fee, but they actually are very good at knocking out these scam internet messages. They keep you from going onto internet sites that are actually home base for a lot of these identity thieves and other scam groups that are out there. And they will knock down, any effort to put spyware into your computer. They're much better in many cases than, in most cases, than the protection that comes for free with your computer. Limit the personal information that you have on social media, such as Facebook or any other place you might go, like single seniors or whatever it might be. Just limit the information that you have on yourself there, because the scammers are going to exploit it and call up and pretend to be somebody who just fits you to a T and who knows your wants and needs, and is going to be able to exploit those wants and needs to run one of these various scams upon you. One of my pet peeves is always on Facebook. I see what's called a security question quiz. And this is usually somebody who puts up a question, what was the name of your first grade teacher? Or what was the name of your dog? What street number did you have? Or what street did you live on when you were in high school? If you remember that when you go on to, say, your bank website, they not only have you sign in with your special ID and your password, but they throw a security question at you every now and then. And what is that question? It's usually, what was the name of your first dog? What was the name of your first grade teacher? What street did you grow up on? And so when you see these things on Facebook asking you these questions, just click past it, or just say, this is a security question scam site. Nobody answer these questions, because that's what they're up to. Which elder fraud scams have gone the craziest during the pandemic? Usually this is where I do a show of hands, and lots of people will say one and somebody else will do the other, and then I'll say, you're all right. All of these scams have gone crazy during the COVID. It's partly because we were all at home. We didn't have much else to do, especially our social life was suffering a little bit. It made us more susceptible to some of these sweetheart scams. But all of the scams actually went crazy during the COVID problem, and they still are. Ones that were particularly bad involved people pretending to be with these companies, Amazon or FedEx, eBay, UPS, even the Postal Service, claiming there's a problem with your shipment, or there's somebody trying to make a charge on your Amazon account. Did you charge, or did you purchase a $2,000 4K widescreen TV, Mr. Kirkman? And you're invited to click to talk to them if that's not the case. And so those are usually lures to get you to talk to one of these scam groups, or to click on a website that's going to install spyware on your computer. And that's pretty easy to do, because here's an example of my messages from Amazon. We use Amazon a lot, so here are messages from them telling me this is coming, your order is ready, blah, blah, blah. And so when you get a stray message that appears to be from Amazon saying there's this issue, one of the first things you're going to do reflexively is click on that message. And when you do that, if it's from one of these scam groups, they're going to be installing instantaneously spyware and malware on your computer and start making purchases in your name. Here's another one that I got fairly recently involving Amazon Prime. And there was an issue. This is back when I was buying most stuff online. And so my first instinct was to click that little blue link down at the bottom. And I thought the better of it, thank goodness, because I'm pretty sure it would have ended up being one of these scam groups. Here's another one you'll see about resetting your password, claims to be from American Express. I mean, these things have just gone crazy. So why do these members of the elder fraud industry target older adults? Why are they targeting people in their mid-60s and up? It's because that's where the money is. Our generation, or my generation, I don't know if you're as old as I am, but the baby boom generation and the generation ahead of it, called the quiet generation now, that's their new name, we actually have a net average individual worth of about $175,000. That doesn't mean we all do, but on average, we do. This is something like 4 times as much as Generation X and 20 times as much as the millennial generation. So we're the ones that have the money. We're the ones they're going to come after. We're the ones that developed all their techniques to scam. So these are some of the vulnerabilities that the elder fraud industry really seeks out. And these are vulnerabilities that they tell us about when we would bring them into the embrace of the legal system. And they always want to key on people who live on a fixed income, and they're worried about their monthly income being enough to carry them through to the end of their lives. And these are people who often will fall victim to these sweepstakes, lottery scams. They also know that people in our generation, the baby boom generation and up, have fairly easy access to funds compared to the younger generations. A lot of us have a lot of equity in our home, or maybe even 100% equity. We have good credit, so they know that they can tap us for that. There's a big problem with depression. And in the book, we talk a lot about how these scammers will spot depression in one of their targets, one of their victims, and exploit it to actually keep them from communicating with their own family and just communicate only with the people who are telling them, well, Mr. Kirkman, you got $1 million coming. There's also a vulnerability, which I didn't really realize until it was explained to me by a geriatrician, but there is amongst a lot of retirees a desire to be a decision maker again. And most of these fraud groups are going to make you the captain, put you back in the captain's chair. You're going to be in charge of all these big decisions and this multi-million-dollar transaction involving moving funds from Nigeria, or this sweetheart scam where you have to get $50,000 over to your new boyfriend overseas, or else he's going to be thrown in jail. They make you the decision maker. Obsessions, a lot of people as they get older, according to geriatricians and others who work with that community, say that your ability to control obsessions lessens as you get older. So that's how a lot of home repair scammers, for instance, are able to find people who are obsessed with keeping their house in tip-top shape, or people who are obsessed with sweepstakes scams. I won't go through all of these. Most of them are fairly self-evident, but The last one is the big one, age-related cognitive decline. And this could be the very early stages of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or some other well-known forms of dementia. It could also just be a normal cognitive aging. As we get older, all of us, our cognitive abilities start to decline a little bit. And it's at this very first stage of that decline that the scammers know that there's a lot of vulnerabilities. So they are seeking out people who are starting to experience this, their ability to process information quickly or to make decisions under pressure. They know that as people get older, they're not as able to do that as well as when they were younger. And so they're going to blast these targets of theirs with all these representations that something terrible is happening to their grandchild, or something terrible is going to happen to their house if they don't get it fixed right away, or something very exciting is going to happen to them, like $40 million moving into their bank account from overseas. And so they strike when people are in these early stages of cognitive decline. And if you've ever been a caregiver for somebody who has one of these conditions, you know that at the very beginning, there were certain times when they were fairly vulnerable to this type of excitement. So that's why all these scammers have some sort of exciting or alarming statement in their narrative when they start off. And they keep that narrative going. You know, once you've paid them money for this, there's money that's needed for something else. You know, another problem in your house, or another problem for your grandson who's down in Mexico. They're going to keep coming back over and over again. And that's how they end up getting all of this money that, like we showed earlier on the screen, where people might lose $60,000 or $200,000 or even $900,000. Lately, it's been very easy to see that something's a scam because of the way the scammers want you to pay. The banks have become very good at, and especially the credit card companies have become very good at cutting off payments to suspicious organizations, such as the ones we're talking about. So more recently, they've adopted other methods of payment that usually are the telltale sign that a scam is in progress. Now, the driveway paving scammers and home repair scammers, they still want a check from you. They're going to ask for a check and they're going to immediately go and cash it. Usually the most dangerous place to be in North Carolina is between the home repair fraud victim and the bank, where the scammer is racing down the road to cash it before the victim can call the bank up and stop payment. But that was the traditional way of doing things. And then more recently, the scammers, especially the ones overseas, would ask you to wire money to them. Go to your local grocery store or your CVS pharmacy, Walgreens, whatever store you like, because almost all of them have a Western Union or MoneyGram counter in the front. And then wire the money to India, wire the money to Great Britain, wherever these people were based. And within 15 minutes, they would have your money, and they were not going to give it back. They were never going to get traced. They were never going to be arrested. So after a lot of pressure from people like me and the attorneys general from all the states and also the federal government, the scammers about 10 years ago started switching to these devices, these prepaid prepaid cards, gift cards. And the scammer will usually tell their victim, Mr. Kirkman, go down to CVS pharmacy, go to the stand that has all the gift cards and get 6 $500 gift cards. Go through the checkout aisle and don't answer any questions if the cashier tries to ask you what are these for, because they are trained to ask you that. And then I'll stay on the phone with you. And as soon as you get outside, you read me the numbers on the back of these cards. And this is still a very popular way for the elder fraud industry to get money from people. And sure enough, people go out into the parking lot, they get in their car, and they read the back of the card to this person in Pakistan or wherever. And that money is immediately taken off or out of that card. It's never going to be seen again. So you know it's not okay by the way they want you to pay. So again, there's ways you can protect yourself from some of these things. And a lot of it involves just stuff you've heard before. Let all calls on your cell phone or your regular phone especially, that are not from your friends or your contacts, go to voicemail or to the answering machine. Get the best call screening features that are possible from your particular service provider. My service provider for my landline is CenturyLink, and they hardly have anything, but others actually do have some pretty good programs to protect you from people like that. Never press 1 on a robocall where they ask you to contact them about something. Just hang up. If you really think it's from your bank, hang up and call your bank using your normal contact information. Or if they pretend to be Amazon, hang up, go on your Amazon account, contact them that way, but never press 1 on a robocall to respond to one of these types of calls that you get. Only call or contact an organization using the information on what you know to be its actual website. Again, we talked about the computer security programs that you can get. And the most important thing is really don't click that link in that email or in that text message. Know all the senior scams that are out there, attend programs like this, and go on AARP's website. They have stories every day about the latest scams and how you can actually be victimized without even knowing it. And if it's something involving somebody pretending to be in love with you over the internet, just know that he's not really real until he hands you flowers at your front door. Somebody you can actually see and go out with, and hold on to your heart and your wallet even after that. Keep checking that person out as much as you can. Just don't take it on faith. And finally, the most important thing that you can do is to freeze your credit report. You can do that for free with all 3 credit reporting companies. If you're in the baby boom generation like me or older, you're not going to really need credit that much in your day-to-day life. It doesn't really harm you that much to freeze your credit report, but this keeps the scammers from actually going in and doing a lot of damage to you financially. So freeze your credit report. If you need to go buy a car, or you need to co-sign your grandchild's apartment lease and they need to see your credit report, you can lift the credit freeze for 1 day and then it goes back down and you're protected again. Again, if you need to check out the pitch, please do so. There are 2 really good sources for this. One's the Attorney General's Office, Consumer Protection Division in Raleigh. And the number is 8775, no scam. You can see it there. If you're in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area, it's 919-716-6000. And just ask to speak to somebody about whatever pitch you're getting. And also, a really good one that I also work with and have been on the phone with is the AARP Fraud Watch Network. You see the number here on your screen. They have people who are on the phone pretty well into the night and into the weekend. So you can actually catch them beyond the usual 9 to 5 that the Attorney General's people are there. But that's my presentation for today. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them for you.
Thanks, Dave. I had one note. It's something that I had noticed lately happening on Facebook, is where you'll get a friend request from someone who it looks like your friend that you're already friends with on Facebook. And the way that people are doing that and finding the friends list and adding people to their friends list who aren't really your friend is, if you don't keep your friends list private, if you don't have your privacy settings set on Facebook to where the public can't just see your friends list. And so I don't know if people are familiar with that, or if they've gotten that where people are like, oh, I've been hacked, don't take a friend request from me. It's not that they've been hacked, it's that their friends list is public. And so then scammers go on and steal your picture and create another account with your name and go down your friends list and try to add everyone.
That's absolutely true. And that's one of the things I probably should have pointed out. I do it a lot in other presentations. Make sure your Facebook friends list, the access to your Facebook account is only by your friends. And if you want to get risky, you can say your friends' friends. But then if one of your friends has one of these scammers pretending to be them, they can actually see your stuff. But that's what gives the criminals the ability to see a lot of information about you and to use it, to compile it, and to exploit you in some way or another. So that's a very good point.
I think we've got 2 people with questions. Dorothy had her hand raised.
Well, this is related. I have a very limited number of friends on my Facebook. I just haven't expanded it. But yesterday I received 2 of these, and the day before, one friend requests from names that are just completely alien to me. Now, they may be friends of some of my friends, I don't know, but they're just strange names. I deleted them, but what are they after? If
They
this
just-
is a nefarious.
It's usually something nefarious. And a lot of times they're just hoping that certain people will click on anybody when it makes a friend request. I've got young relatives who do that. You know, they just want to have 2,300 friends on Facebook. And so one of these people can actually make a request and they'll click yes. Sometimes, especially for men who are being attacked by the sweetheart scammers, there'll be a friend request from this really hot looking woman. That's some picture somebody stole off the internet. And, you know, the guy goes, oh, I'm going to check her out. I'll be her friend. And next thing you know, scammers got complete access to, you know, him through Facebook. And it's probably some guy in Russia who's doing it. It's not even a, you know, hot woman that appears in the picture. But yes, it's all attempts, you know, to access you through Facebook.
Pat had a question.
I have one question, but then I want to pass on something learned by experience. Is this your typical audience that's 99% female?
For scam presentations or fraud presentation?
Yeah.
No, it's usually pretty much 50-50 on the only time where I would say these scams were targeted mostly to female would be on the sweetheart scams that come over the internet. Most of the victims that we have seen have been female, but our audience, my audiences have always been an even mix usually.
So I want to pass on some information that my adult daughter is has power of attorney over her aunt who has dementia. And she just recently had to go to court and get custody. But she was looking at her, my daughter was looking at her aunt's bank statements and saw that she was writing a check almost every day to bogus charities. She gave me a list of the charities and I looked them up on Charity Navigator. One of them had a rating of C and none of the others were even listed. So she had all of her mail sent to a post office box that my daughter would go once a week and pick up the mail and get rid of everything except what was necessary. Then she noticed that our aunt, when she would maybe go to deliver the mail, she might be there 15 or 20 minutes and she would get several phone calls. And it was really dicey as to how much information she would give out. So her ringer on her phone has been turned off. And she has a list of calls. She doesn't even know how to call 911. So my daughter had to write that down. She wrote the family's phone numbers down and a friend. And so she can call out, but we can't even call her. Fortunately, we don't all live that very far from her, so we can go if we have to. And then her physician suggested that somebody come in regularly to check on her to see, you know, if she was deteriorating or whatever. But when they contacted care businesses, you know, they needed somebody, you had to have somebody come in for minimum of 3 or 4 hours, and you had to have something for them to do and all that. And that was not what we thought was necessary. So we were able to find someone through church who goes twice a week for an hour and just talks with her and stimulates her. And then they felt like she needed exercise. So now I go once a week and walk around the block with her and take her a meal. And I have applied for, because there's no fruit on her counter, there's no fresh produce in her refrigerator. She fortunately doesn't use a stove. She'll cook things in the microwave. But so I applied recently for Meals on Wheels, but I haven't heard about that yet. But anyway, those are just some tips that you all might want to use.
It sounds like you're doing most of the right things as far as protecting a vulnerable person like that from especially being more personally engaged and communicating with them and visiting them. That the isolation factor can't be underestimated
Yeah.
as far as vulnerability to fraud. And people do really want to talk to somebody a lot when they're in those situations. So good for you.
And I do on my own personal phone. I still have a landline. I hate cell phones. Hate cell phones. And but I do have them. And so when the phone rings, if the call is from out of the service area code, and it doesn't have a name, it immediately is blocked. There's a block on mine that I can block the call. If it's from the area, it doesn't. If it's from our area code but doesn't have a person's name, I let it go to the answering machine. And usually they hang up before they even have to leave a message. So we get a lot fewer calls because I could probably count on one hand the number of family or friend or family calls I get in a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't need to worry about anything going to the answering machine.
I've got my landline right there. I'm just amazed it hasn't gone off during this presentation because my landline just goes off all day long, well into the night. And every call just about is obviously a scam.
Are you able to block? Because since I've been blocking calls, I mean, I must have 30. I went through my block call list the other day looking to see, because my financial advisor he calls with his cell phone when it's twice a year when he's supposed to call me. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have his name or his company name. And so it's been blocked. And so I told him, unless you want to go into the office and call me on, the company phone, you're going to be blocked. And so he emailed me, which is what he did. He emailed me because he couldn't get through. Yeah. And but we get sometimes no phone calls a day since I've been doing this block calls. It's nice, very nice.
Well, the state and federal government have been after the phone companies to adopt technologies that'll filter out these calls. Next, they do have that technology, but they don't want to spend the money on it. But now there's intense pressure by Congress also for the phone companies to do this. So hopefully our technological advantage as consumers is going to catch up with the scammers' technological advantage that they've had for the last 10, 20 years, as far as pumping our landlines and cell phones full of phone calls. So, anybody else have a question? Or?
I think Dorothy has another.
Well,
reason that we'll go to.
I'll just ask about this. This is one, if it's all indeed a scam, they're hitting widows. Regarding your late husband, they purport to be from Social Security Administration, and they call you regarding all this money you haven't been getting because you didn't file. The first time I got a letter in the mail and it looked spurious. It didn't look like something that was actually mailed by the Social Security Administration. So I simply called the local Social Security office, told them what I had, what it looked like, and the person checked, nothing had gone out. I've been getting phone calls, and I'm like Pat, if I'm anywhere near my one of my phones, I get information on it and I see that I don't want to pick it up. But I occasionally am stuck answering an older phone in the kitchen. So I've gotten telephone calls. I got one recently. My husband will have been dead 12 years this coming Sunday. And just now, somebody, so I just hang up. Mm-hmm. I don't keep it. Are they fishing for personal information on me or what? I just haven't
Well,
taken their,
the first thing is that the Social Security Administration doesn't call out to people like that.
Yeah.
They just don't do it. But what the scammers are trying to do is to get your bank account number so they can automatically debit these additional funds, suppose they're meant to be for you. And instead of depositing that money in your account, they're going to debit your account, drain it as fast and as much as they can. So it's a fairly simple scam. Once they get in contact with you, they convince you you're going to get a lot more each month from Social Security. But good for you for not going for
I
it.
just haven't, well, the one that came in the mail, I called Social Security office. I mean,
Yeah,
I know there is nothing coming to me. You know, at the time of his death, of course, notified Social Security, and I didn't qualify
Mhm.
for his Social Security payments.
So was there another question?
Yes, I think, yes, go ahead.
It's Anna.
So Dave, I took pictures of some of your slides and I wanted to know if I could have permission to have that information printed in our church newsletter, or does that harm your activities in any kind of way?
It doesn't at all. It's I have no copyright claim on any of that, and share it as much as you can. It's important to get the information out there, and this is not something that I do for financial reasons or for income. So don't worry about it. Thanks for asking, though.
We're also recording this presentation, and so it'll be available on YouTube for free for anyone if you want to send it to somebody or share this information with your congregation.
Yeah, and we'll send out a follow-up email. And Dave, I don't know if you want to forward me your PowerPoint, because I can even send that out too.
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah, I can send that out as well. But I appreciate that widowhood was brought up, and I kind of want to go back to Facebook really quickly. And again, around privacy, they have that option to change your relationship status. And if you shift it to widowed and that's public in any way, you're going to get hit with a bunch of eligible bachelors who will hop into your friend requests. I was widowed young and started having, I mean, I knew better, but all these random men who just sort of showed up. And they all claim to be either people in the military, or they're also widowed or whatever. And it's this whole thing. I don't go as far as clicking beyond to like look at their profile and delete, but anytime you have anywhere advertised that you're widowed, and some you can't help it. Like if you put an obituary out, I mean, people are going to see that, but just be careful on social media around your relationship status.
If you list your grandchildren by name, especially where they live, same thing will happen. The grandparent scammers will contact you. And these Russians have actually got the ability through special computer programs to record one of your grandchildren as they post a video where they're speaking. And then they can replicate your grandchild's voice perfectly through these computer programs. So they will call up and they will sound just like your grandson, David Kirkman. And Grandma, I'm in trouble. I've been arrested, here in Florida. Please bail me out. Don't tell Mom. And it'll sound just like your grandson. So that's another example. Less said, the better.
Yeah, and usually, right, isn't it where they're like, oh, don't hang up the phone, you have to stay on the line with me. But those are the times you should hang up and actually call the number you have for that relative and just double check and see.
Matter, because she's gonna talk.
Linda.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. Anytime they say, don't call Mom, don't call Dad, or don't call me back on my cell phone because the jailer has got the cell phone and he'll get mad at me if you call. Those are all giveaways that it's one of these types of scams, a grandparent scam going down.
Could you give us more giveaways? I don't care where in the world these people are. That doesn't make a difference to me. I want to know what's their line, what's their come on, name some more things that we should have our antenna up about.
Let's see. Well, you know the IRS scam where they always say there's a problem, you have not been paying the full amount of your taxes, you're going to be arrested immediately. You need to come to the courthouse now, et cetera, et cetera. Same for jury duty. You know, there's a jury duty scam run by the same people who say you didn't show up for jury duty last week and you're going to be arrested unless you pay this fine right now. Please go buy some gift cards at CVS Pharmacy. And as soon as you hear that, or as soon as you hear somebody saying you didn't show up for jury duty, hang up. You'll know it's a scam. What are some other ones there?
Okay, do you want to ask?
How do I do it?
Just to see if they'll.
Can hear you, so if you want to go ahead and ask. If
Yes, I would like to make two comments. First of all, I don't do Facebook. You would be amazed at how much time you spend on Facebook. And occasionally somebody will show me something that they got on Facebook, and I think millions of people are probably seeing that. And anyway,
That's true.
for a number of decades, I've gotten catalogs from Daedalus Books, and they sell bargain books. And their mailing address is Hudson, Ohio. But you can order today, and they have a toll-free number. Call us toll-free 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I went for a time without ordering anything. And then I did call in, and I waited till I thought, well, sort of normal business hours in Ohio. And I got a woman on the phone, and she was speaking English, but it was very hard to hear her. To understand her. And as we talked, and she took my order, the first thing she wanted was my credit card number. And that kind of bothered me. But I kept talking, and finally I asked where she was from. And she was in some Eastern European country because, they offer this service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Well, I figured, okay, I hadn't spent a lot of money on these books, and I'll just see if they come, and they did.
Mm.
But it really bothered me, and I haven't ordered anything since then. I used their catalog to see things that I might get at my local library or get my local bookstore to order for me.
You might want to keep close tabs on your credit card bill to see if anything unusual is showing up. But
I think that a lot of mail order or whatever service things are handled out of country because they're cheaper. My husband has a subscription to the N&O, and when we don't get it or we want to stop it for vacation, you call the N&O's number that they publish, but you get this person you can hardly understand. I finally asked him, I said, where are you located? In the Philippines. But they are hired by the N&O because they're cheaper.
well, if it's a number off the N&O website, it's the N&O website, you're probably safe. They're calling you out of the blue. That's more of a problem. But
yeah, but this woman said she placed the call to make the book order.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing. While scams could be coming from multiple countries, we do need to take care that we don't blanket represent people from different countries and backgrounds and different abilities to speak English or not English as somehow untrustworthy just by virtue of where they're from. Just as a caveat there.
yeah, that's true. And if it's going to be, some call center that you use the company's actual website to get that number, you can feel safe. And they'll probably will take your credit card because the credit card companies haven't identified them as a scam group. But as soon as they ask you for a gift card, pay through a gift card, pay through Western Union, MoneyGram, then you absolutely know that this group in whatever country it is part of the elder fraud industry. And you're not going to ever see that money again. So yeah, it's always a fine line we have to walk when we make these presentations talking about all these different countries. But again, it's an international multi-billion-dollar organized crime group, and they are very, very effective in getting money out of all of us.
Yeah, indeed, very savvy. There's one that we ran into at our church. Somebody was emailing people claiming to be our minister and asking us to run an errand for him, which involved, can you run out and give me some gift cards? So just if you're not sure if it's really that person or if it comes from an email address that you're not familiar with, just call the person that you know and trust and check in to see if it was them.
We received an email from our minister, I think it was in the church bulletin. If you hold your mouse over the return address, make sure that their email of the person sending you will show. And if it's not the way that your minister normally, at such and such and whatever, then it's not from him. And you can do that with anybody. If somebody calls and says you're their friend and they're over in some place and they can't get home, I think they don't do that anymore. It's so obvious. Need money to get home or something. Just hold your mouse over their address and see if that's the address that recognized for that person.
That's a good technique because they not only spoof phone numbers, they spoof email addresses, and that's how you can tell if its email address has been spoofed by right-clicking over the address you see on your screen. Now, I've done entire presentations on religious-based scams that actually target churches, or scams where they pretend to be a very religious individual to tap into your religious feelings and actually exploit you. But I guess that would be for a different time. But each one of these different types of scams has their own unique features to it that we haven't really delved into today.
Anyone else have any questions before we close? I know we're getting close to time.
I just had one thing I was curious about. You were talking about, not stereotyping persons from other countries as being criminals or whatever. But I'm wondering if, how vulnerable some of those people are to the head honchos, who go out and recruit people to get into this kind of business. Because one of the things that I almost fell for was this super polite, really nice, nice young man, and before it was all over with, I found myself lecturing him about how smart he is and he should be doing something else other than trying to, defraud people. And so,
It is hard for some of these people to get out of that business because it's organized criminal gangs that are doing it. In whichever country it might be, it's usually some organized criminal group that's behind it. And they often don't like people leaving their organization, or at least they want to make sure that their organization is not going to be harmed by that individual when they leave. So some people go into it and can't get out. And I've heard stories about that in Jamaica, where there are a lot of people who run sweepstakes scams. They're some of the wealthiest people on the island, and people who've worked for them are fearful. And so that's.
Could I say one more thing about my experience with Daedalus? I was not intending to make any snide remarks about the woman in wherever she was in the world.
Oh, sure. I understand. Yes. I just wanted I didn't think you were.
I'm serious. I think we're challenged right now to accept other people wherever they are in the world. And in this very issue of the Daedalus catalog, on the back, you can order 4 different T-shirts with sunflowers on them for Ukraine. What bothered me was that last time I had ordered from Daedalus, a young woman or man had answered and sounded like somebody that I would expect to answer when I called them 10 years ago. And I'm hearing challenged. So I really pick up on accents and did I understand what you said? So I just like to say that about what I said.
Oh, sure. No, I
Thank you.
understand. Yeah, no, it can be hard to hear on the phone, and accents definitely create a challenge around that for sure. Yes. No, and I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, I guess we can close. Did you want to close or you want me to close, Elizabeth?
Doesn't matter to me. Why don't you close?
All right, well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. And at the end of these presentations, we often take a moment to take a few breaths and kind of recenter ourselves and our time. So I'm going to count off the first one, and then you can count your own second and third breath. All right, 1, 'Thank you again so much for joining us today. And if you have any other questions, you can get in touch with us, and we will be sending out an email with this recording and more information. Thank you again, Dave, for joining us. And we hope that you all have a wonderful and safe weekend.
Have a good one, everyone.
And the same
Bye-bye.
thank you.